Hey, happy sunshine family. We're back here for part 3 of the Heather Ann Tucci-Jarraf detention hearing transcript. This hearing was held on August 29, 2017 in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Tennessee, in front of Magistrate Judge C. Clifford Shirley Jr. As you'll notice on the screen here, I've got a little webcam set up. I've conditioned my cat to know where her little napping bed is on this other chair here, and I've got the webcam on it. And so for all of you who have sent me messages wanting to somehow include my cat in with these videos, when she feels like she wants to jump up there, I'll be ready to include her with that. She's being a little bit bashful right now, so maybe in the future. All right, let's head on over to tripping right over my tongue. Let's head on over to the detention hearing transcript and pick up where we left off. We left off at the end of page 22, going into page 23. And so Judge Shirley is saying, yes, you desire to represent yourself, yes? Oh, you know what? I'm going to switch over to this view because I can give you the indicator for any pauses. So Heather says, yes. I'll go back and correct it later, yes. And you give up your right to be represented by an attorney. I know that you said not to bring this up, but without prejudice of reservation of jurisdiction, I will, which is why I didn't want to address the issue of pro se, pro per, etc. until after we had done jurisdiction. Okay, so let's suppose I find jurisdiction. Heather says, okay. Judge Clifford continues, is appropriate here. Heather says, okay. If, whether you find it or don't, the point is that there is a difference between me presenting on behalf of myself and me presenting as self, that I am myself. I'm not here on behalf of anyone. I'm not an attorney representing myself as an attorney. I am one and the same. I'm just me, and I'm going to be moving forward. Judge says, every human that comes into this court has a right to represent themselves. You have the same right as every other person. They don't have the right to represent anybody else. Heather says, uh-huh. Judge continues, only a lawyer can do that. And only a lawyer that's properly in this court can do that. So the only person you are representing is yourself. Heather says, and that's just, and Judge cuts her off, that's all I'm asking you. And Heather says, and that is a matter of difference in legal status. And I'm just trying to say, and the judge cuts her off and says, it isn't. Heather continues, the correct legal status. Judge says, that's legal. Heather says, I know you disagree. That's not just legal wrong, it's just mumbo jumbo. It really isn't anything. Heather says, okay. Are you giving? Heather cuts him off. To answer your question, yes, I will go forward. All right. Are you giving up your right, waiving your right to be represented by a lawyer? That's a yes or a no. Without prejudice, yes. Okay. And is your decision completely voluntary on your part? Without prejudice, yes. All right. I am prepared to find that the defendant has knowingly and voluntarily waived her right to counsel, and I will permit her to represent herself. Do you have any disagreement or objection to that finding, Miss Davidson? No, Your Honor. Okay. Any misstatement as far as you understand, Mr. Lloyd? No, Your Honor. All right. Now she has requested that I appoint you as standby or elbow counsel to assist her in this matter and in that capacity. Before I get to the qualifications on that, would you be willing to be so appointed? Yes, Your Honor. You understand the limited nature of that appointment? Yes, Your Honor. That you are only to assist her, but you are always to assist her with regard to making a record, helping her with filing, being a liaison on her behalf to the court, but you do not direct the case. It's her case. Do you understand that? I understand that, Your Honor. All right. Can you provide her copies and advice on the rules and procedure? Excuse me. All right. You can provide her copies of and advice on the rules and procedure, but it's still her decision on how to try her case. Do you understand that? Yes, Your Honor. So, Miss Tucci-Jarraf, before court this morning, did you? Miss Davidson cuts the judge off. Your Honor, might I be heard? Yes. Just briefly, the United States. It's not typically our role to object to standby counsel or counsel, but the rules provide that the defendant must be indigent to have appointed counsel. Judge Shirley says, I was just about to go over the, and Miss Davidson cuts him off. Yes, Your Honor, and I just wanted to point out several inadequacies with her interview. She says that she's fully supported by her husband, but she refuses to give any information regarding her husband. And the defendant was arrested at Trump Hotel, and we proffer that she was paying for that hotel, and it was $700 a night. If you also look at her travel, it looks at her travel, she has substantial means. And we would oppose her being treated as indigent simply because she chooses not to work. Thank you, Your Honor. All right. Heather pipes up. Your Honor, may I respond to that? Judge says, yes. Mr. Lloyd, at every step from here on, you're not appointed yet. We're talking about you being appointed, but I hope you will advise her at least of her rights against self-incrimination that I've tried to remind her. I'm very willing to discuss these matters that we normally discuss in every case because those shouldn't be detrimental or the least bit incriminating, but I never know what somebody is going to say and it could be detrimental to them. So, Mr. Lloyd says, well, Your Honor, let me, if I might, I was present this morning for the defendant's interview. Judge says, right. Mr. Lloyd continues. That generated the recommendation offered to the court this morning by pretrial services. With respect to the means of Miss Tucci-Jarraf's husband, obviously, in the marshal's lockup, Mr. Jarraf was not there. I believe that he would be happy to talk with the pretrial services and probation officers about that. I am informed that the defendant did spend the night with 2 other people at the President's Hotel inside the District of Columbia, and that it was for significantly less than $700, split 3 ways. And apart from that, I would like to make it plain on the record that the defendant is advised by me as standby counsel that in responding to the court's inquiries, she needs to make certain that she does not provide a response under oath that would place her at risk for prosecution of any crime against the United States or any of its states. I have found Ms. Tucci-Jarraf to be very capable of understanding my advice and statements. I hope she continues to be. Judge says, all right, I think she does too. I'm just trying to always at every turn remind people because sometimes they just take off and start talking and eventually say something that's very detrimental to them. Mr. Lloyd says, and I thank the court for that because I've had what feels like more than my share of very chatty defendants. Yes, yes, says Judge Shirley. Usually sitting in the backs of police cruisers, says Mr. Lloyd. Yeah, Mr. Lloyd's speaking some truth right there, guys. That's all I'm going to say. Judge says, well, and invariably, they think that that is assisting them, and I can appreciate probably why. But because she's law trained, she would understand that none of that would really be beneficial to her in front of me, you know, in this particular case. Because my decisions are very limited in these confines, if you will, to what I'm asking her. So I'm not trying her case. I'm not going to be trying her case, and I'm just trying to get through the basics on this. So Ms. Tucci-Jarraf, prior to the hearing in this morning, I believe you met with the probation officers and provided information and then signed a financial affidavit. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. I met with Ms. Smith. So before we go on to the next page, I just want to state that what Judge Shirley is saying here on page 28, lines 12 through 23 roughly, is that he has limited capacity in this case. And that's what I was talking about in my previous video, where we went over the duties of a magistrate judge. And they handle just about everything except for presiding over felony trials themselves. That is left for the district judge, which is Thomas A. Varlin. Okay, the court says, pardon? Heather says, I did meet with Ms. Smith and signed a financial affidavit. All right, and is the information you provided on there true and correct? Heather says, the only thing that seems to be, as far as I said that, where it says, quote, she shared her husband, supports her financially, end quote. I said that he actually works and that money all goes to supporting our 4 children, and that I didn't know what his finances were because he had just received a new job with a promotion recently. So I wasn't sure what the amount was, and that they would have to speak to him when he showed up here in court. Obviously, there hasn't been a moment for them to do that yet, but that he would willingly share that information. As far as what I live off of, it is stated correctly in here with the bank accounts at 48, and as Mr. Lloyd had spoken about earlier regarding the room, it was accurate what he had stated. There was 3 people sharing the costs, and the room was well under $700. It was $359 from the internet. So it was actually cheaper for us to stay there. So I'm not sure where the state is getting the information on that. Then again, I was picked up, so I don't know what the bill actually was at that point, the service and fees and taxes. Judge says, so, okay. So generally, here's the questions I usually ask people. So all the money you have in all the bank accounts, security account, any kind of account of any nature is $48? Heather says yes. Other than the Treasury direct deposit account, yes. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. That caught me off guard. Page 30, line 5 and line 6. Oh, Heather's brilliant. Oh, she knew that the judge was going to be asking these questions. Oh, wow. And she she had a landmine for him. Oh, that's good stuff. Oh, wow. This is very entertaining. Other than what, the judge replies. Heather says, an account that I don't have access to, which is what I believe they're alleging a conspiracy against. Judge says, okay, and as far as employment for you, it says you last worked May 2016 from home. Is that correct? As a consultant, lawyer consultant? So he didn't want to touch this response at all. Like he asked what it was, he explained, and he didn't. He's just moving right along. So let's see. Okay, in response to being a consultant, a lawyer consultant. Actually, from until May 19th, 2016, I actually was traveling around the world doing a job. But that was to foreclose on a whole bunch of different international corporations. That job was done as of May 16th or May 19th. And I came back here to start a consulting business. It was just starting and getting up off the ground when I was in DC. So I hadn't received anything other than the $700, which I utilized for cost to stay in DC. All right, so you've only earned $700 from that consulting business. Yes. All right. And then Heather continues, and the amount, 48, I don't know if that's the current amount right now. It could be a little less. Judge says, go ahead, I'm sorry. Heather says, that was the $48 account and then a credit card, which has been since frozen. So those were my only two means. And I do understand that you don't, oh, sorry. And then the judge says, and I do understand that you don't own any real property. Heather says, I have no real property, no. And if you were to work, if I were to release you and you were to work, do you have any idea what your income would be? Heather says, you know, probably around the same amount, $700, say $700 a month, and that would be very liberal. Judge says, okay. I guess the judge cut her off in mid-sentence by saying, okay, and Heather's continuing. At this point, because of this case and everything else, I don't know if I would be able to get anything except for remedial, such as waitressing or anything else at this point. All right. Due to this pending charge. Court says, all right, and your husband is Tucci-Jarraf? Yes. And he works at Logan International? He would have to speak directly because I'm not sure of all the facts, but he works. Judge says, you don't know where your husband works? Well, the new company that he started for, Judge says, I didn't ask you that. I just asked you where. Heather says, the Sky Company is in Massachusetts, Boston, Massachusetts, but they do all the servicing for, as I understand it, they do all the servicing for the airplanes at Logan International Airport, which is where he is located. So he works at Logan International. Heather says, but not for Logan International. It's for another company. Judge says, I didn't ask that. I just asked where. And okay, and just in rough numbers, what kind of income does he have per year? Heather says, may I inquire as to that? You don't know? Like I said, he got a raise. I don't know what. And then the judge says, before he got his raise. I believe it was a minimum wage starting, and then there was a promotion or some amount higher that he's getting now. Judge says, all right. Heather continues, but he would be able to confirm directly with Mr. Miller and Ms. Smith. Judge says, I assume it's under $30,000 a year? Heather says, I would say that's a safe assumption. Okay, and just for the sake of clarity, is Mr. Jarraf in the courtroom? Yes, he is. The judge says, Is that accurate that you make less than $30,000 a year? Mr. Jarraf says yes. Court says he said yes. Returning to you, Mr. Jarraf, does that income also go to help support your 4 minor children? Heather says, as far as I know, all that income goes to supporting the 4 minor children. I haven't seen any of that income. Court says, all right. I'm going to find that she qualifies at this point to have appointed standby counsel. I'm appointing you, Mr. Lloyd, to serve as elbow or standby counsel pursuant to the Criminal Justice Act, 18 U.S.C. Section 3006A. It is my hope that you will aid and to some extent relieve me of having to explain and enforce all the basic rules of courtroom protocol, procedure, and decorum. You should help Ms. Tucci-Jarraf with regard to procedural and evidentiary obstacles that she might find in completing a task like we mentioned earlier, introducing evidence or objecting to testimony. And also, you can provide her technical assistance in the presentation of her defense and preserving the record for appeal. This is the first time that Judge Shirley has used the word presentation of her defense rather than representation. Do you understand the rule? Mr. Lloyd says, yes, Your Honor. Could I ask the court's indulgence with respect to appointing me as of this past Thursday when I first appeared in this case? Judge says, I take that as for voucher purposes? Yes, Your Honor. If you'll submit it as Nunc pro Tunc, the court will be inclined to do so. I want to think about that for a minute, but it's not anything we need to take up at this moment, so that will come later. Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Wow, this is a really important sentence, guys. Even though they're just talking about what day Mr. Lloyd on paper will start his duty status as elbow counsel for Heather Ann Tucci-Jarraf, the judge, in responding to Mr. Lloyd, uses the words Nunc pro Tunc. And that Nunc pro Tunc and then praetera praetera is the phrase that Heather has been going off of for quite a while. And it's interesting to see the judge use the first part of that and advice to Mr. Lloyd about how to submit his start date for voucher purposes. So let's just finish up with the end of this page and then we'll call it good for now. Judge says, all right, so at this point, Ms. Tucci-Jarraf, you represent yourself rather than present. Mr. Lloyd will continue to aid you on a limited basis as your elbow or standby counsel. All right, I understand we're here for a detention hearing, and what's the government's position and why? All right, so we'll pick it up next time, family, with Mrs. Davidson's response right there, and we are through the end of page 34. If you've got any love, light, or links for me in this matter or any others that we talk about on my channel, please send them to lunacy, L-U-N-A-S-E-E, at protonmail.com. I love you guys a lot. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.